Hello everyone, I'm pleased to welcome you to this new session of the day to kickstart this afternoon. We'll be focusing on AI, cybersecurity and space. As you've seen it, for the better part of the last 5 years, those three sectors have been reshaping the deep tech industry, reshaping the economy, and at a huge pace. And today we will be talking about those three sectors, which are basically essential for strengths, for strategic, and everything that is related to sovereignty. I'll be welcomed today and I'll be joined today by 4 amazing speakers, which I will kindly ask you to join. So Estelle Godard from OTB Ventures, Stefano Carosio, if I'm pronouncing that right, from STAM, and 2 entrepreneurs from Zander Labs, and Dida. So I will ask Lorenz Richter and Jonathan Zwaan to join me on stage. So, without further ado, I'll be asking my panelists to introduce themselves, their company, their organizations, and then we'll be able to kickstart this session.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Lorenz. I'm from Berlin. I'm a founder of Dida, where we develop custom AI solutions. We've been doing this now for 8 years, so before AI got super cool, I would say. I have a background in mathematics, so I'm more coming from the technical side myself, and I've been following AI now for 15 years, and I'm excited to be here. Thank you very much.
Bonjour, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stefano Carosio from STAM, which is an engineering company in Genova, Italy, with offices across the country and Brussels. We're about 120. We do artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and space. And we are also involved with the European Space Agency in technology transfer, and we play a role there with them. So I think I'll try to catch up with this later on.
Does this one work? Yes. Hi, my name is Jonathan Zwaan. Good afternoon. I'm CEO, co-founder of Zander Labs. We build non-invasive brain-computer interface systems, a sticker on your head, a small decoding device that translates brain signals into human cognition and human labels to train AI systems and make them more aligned with us, humans. We're about 50 people. We're German-Dutch based, and I look forward to the session today.
Hi everyone, I'm Estelle Godard. I work as a vice president for OTB Ventures. We are early stage deep tech fund investing in Series A with tickets up to 7 million. And we invest globally with a particular focus on Europe. Prior to OTB, I started my career at the European Space Agency, actually, so hence the space background. And OTB does a lot of space investments. We've invested in ISI, Hydrosat, Atmos, amongst others. And we also do a lot of dual-use defense tech.
Thank you to all those 4 panelists. As a first question, I would like to have all of your opinions, respectively in your fields. Why do you think your sector have been so rapidly, exploding, booming actually, and why they're actually the key sectors in deep tech now? So, of course, you'd be talking about AI, I suppose. So, if you can give us, some insights, please.
Yeah, that's a pretty broad question, I would say. But I mean, I guess AI now really found a lot of applications that work super well. So I remember when we started 8 years ago, and we talked to some managers, we really had to convince them that AI is really working. And now people are using chatbots and so on, and I think it really made a huge progress on the technology side. However, the technology, I would say, was even there before, but also people now understood how to use it, and we are finding more and more use cases. And I think this is also, and I hope we will discuss this, a good time to look a little bit ahead, so to think a bit about what use cases will come. But yeah, I mean, the technology evolved quite a bit, the use cases are there, and yeah, I don't know how much I should go into detail now. I could talk about this for an hour, but in general, I guess everyone has used large language models by now. Everyone has created images with diffusion models. So these are technologies that were just not there in this at this level, I would say 3-4 years ago, and there's probably more to come. And I find it's interesting from, as I said, both like an application point of view, but also scientific point of view. and this is also why I like it particularly. Yeah.
Well, on my side, what I can see is that artificial intelligence is becoming the intelligent layer in complex systems to deliver solutions. The cybersec is the trust layer, and space is contributing a lot with the overall infrastructure. What I'm seeing is that more and more they're sending satellites in space, which are creating constellations, and they're doing edge computing. Artificial intelligence is pre-processing the data before they're sent to the ground, and also cybersec is getting more and more important because in space there is a lot of activities that maybe we don't see, but there is quite a lot. So the convergence of these three sectors, let's say, some of them are horizontal, space is a bit more vertical, but actually in terms of infrastructure is engaging more and more the whole system. And we are thinking today that maybe the space data are mainly enabling the downstream application, but actually there is a lot of activities in space, and actually data centers are going to be possibly developed. There are a lot of rumors around. Thales is having plans, so I think that there is a lot of future to come there.
Yeah, I think Lorenz and Stefano already explained a lot about AI and how exciting it is and the recent developments in the reasoning models, the foundation models. For me, the most exciting part now is looking ahead and how these foundation models are going to really be integrated in systems that we use every day. So physical AI, embodied AI, and the reasoning models are awesome and provide great use cases, and we'll discuss those, I'm sure. But still, as they're entering our defense systems, our hospitals, there's still a real gap between how machines predict the world and how we humans actually mean the world and how it, or understand the world. So there's still a gap to be overcome, and I think it's extremely interesting to see how the different big tech companies are taking different routes to make these foundation models, these LLMs, real world models.
Yeah, I think perhaps taking a bit of a step back on what has been said, obviously AI is going to be a backbone, and I think it's going to be hard to raise funds if you don't have AI as part of your solution. However, I think like the way that it's going to be implemented is going to be also balanced. I think like all AI is not necessarily like a good approach, especially for space, cyber, and other domains. I think there's still like some value in mathematical models and other like backbone that we've developed in the past. So it's really like AI, but at the right level and for the right purpose. And I think that's where we're getting now. Like I think we've had a big boom in really taking all of those models, trying to put them everywhere, trying to do everything with them. Same for automation, like trying to automate everything. Now the challenge is going to be doing the right balance and having the right level of AI, the right level of automation, and making that work and putting humans where they need to be put as well for good economics.
Very interesting, thank you. I mean, just one question before we deep dive in each of your kind of structures, to have your perspective on basically how it is possible to make your technologies, your respective industries, a reality. So you could call it like from lab to fab, how to scale your technology and your products, and how from a investor point of view or a support structure point of view, how and what would be essential to go from a concept to a reality that you can scale.
If you give me the mic, I can start. I mean, we don't have a product, we are an agency, which is maybe particularly interesting because we see many, many use cases. So we have developed now, I would say, up to or even more than 60 AI solutions in the past and brought them into production. And I 100% agree with what you said. I mean, when customers come to us and tell us, yeah, we want to do AI for this and that, the first thing we do is be very skeptical and ask ourselves, do you really need AI? And it happened actually a couple of times that we said, well, no, you need mathematical optimization from the 90s, and that's as good as it is. However, I strongly believe also in combining what we have already done in the last decades with modern methods. But yeah, coming back to your question, so, I mean, you really need to understand what the people want, and just defining the problem is sometimes not so clear. So my background is in mathematics, so the first thing a mathematician does is define everything properly, and I find this always funny that sometimes you talk to people from different departments, and then only after a couple of weeks you realize, okay, you have a different language, you don't align, and I think this is a big challenge in general if you want to have successful AI projects. And then you really have to understand the current status of the science. I mean, we have probably a couple of 100 AI papers appearing every day, so there's no chance to follow up, actually. If you go to the big AI conferences, you have 5,000 accepted papers for the big ones. And so you need a little bit of a good overview and really understand the details. I hope this is going a little bit in the right direction of what you intended. Otherwise, please feel free to ask back.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think from our perspective, there's going to be a lot of development still. So we are not really stuck on one particular element. I think it's yet to be seen. Ultimately, the winners are really going to be the ones that are able to iterate and take advantage of what's there and what is really bringing value to the market that they're addressing.
Yeah, maybe for us to move from lab to field is a challenge. Traditionally in neuroscience, people wear bathing caps with 96 channels and electrodes and cables and big computers hanging off it. And you can really predict mental states like workload and attention and focus in real time pretty well after you've done some training and calibration. So for us, the big challenge is to move from the big bathing caps and big compute to small stickers that you can wear in everyday situations, in real environments, and then translating still that EEG data into human cognition data to feed into AI models to make them adaptive. And nowadays with the shift to edge compute and all the AI hardware in the backbone, we can really make that very small, and we can actually bring this kind of technology out of the lab and in the world, into the real world. Now, there's really a tipping point, and we haven't reached it quite yet. We're still working very hard. We're doing a lot of fundamental research in building the decoding algorithms and training the AIs for this. But we're really getting there, and we're seeing uptake with some of the big industries, especially the big frontier labs, that are really looking to bring more understanding in these LLMs than they have today. And that's where we see really things changing very rapidly the coming years.
Well, as far as my experience is concerned, I tackle it more from the space side, and because space is actually today mainly an institutional market, it's not today a real commercial market. Also looking at the LEO economy and the microgravity research that has been undertaken, I think that the idea would be to navigate on one side in partnership with large clients that in space could be either a prime on the delivery side of your solutions, looking at the systemic approach, but also having clients which can buy the service or can buy the product. On the other side, being able to navigate the complexity, but also the huge amount of money which are available, both from the private side, but also ESA and the European Commission has a lot of instruments. We act in Italy as the ESA technology broker and ESA and Cubed ambassadors, who are supporting companies to access and we even deliver money. I'm from Genoa. Genoa is known to be very tight with money, but they gave the opportunity to us to use the funding from ESA and to give it to the company, and we are funding startups. Some of these startups are actually winners. Actually, all of them are the winner of the European Innovation Council, which to me is a good example of a patient funding from the public side, which is matching the private dimension. And the other is to look at the international level. And as far as we are concerned, we just got the contract to run the first space accelerator in Africa, which I think is a very exciting continent in terms of space, because they are launching all the agencies these days, and there we are supposed to accelerate, and they gave us twice money to give to startups in Nairobi. We are going to establish the accelerator within the premises of the Kenyan Space Agency. So there, I think, is also an opportunity also to internationalize and to diversify a bit the market perspective.
Thank you. And building on this, you mentioned like Africa being a booming industry, a booming landscape. I'd like to talk about how the sector in general is evolving, how you see your pipeline of companies evolve. What would you see would be the next trends? How would you see the sector evolving in the coming years? And I mean, maybe if you would have some tips for our entrepreneurs there.
Well, in terms of trends, what I see very much booming these days is actually the upstream segment, which in space means everything that flies over our heads, but with an application in downstream. And I see a lot of joint ventures being established. If I look at Italy, the Orbit, which is a company which is growing fastly and sending payloads in space to bring satellites to the right orbit once they are delivered from the big launcher. They need to be positioned, and there are plenty of satellites nowadays. So it's actually a precise activity to be delivered. But then they merged, actually they bought, but in principle they merged with Planetech, which is one of the oldest company in Italy doing Earth observation. And they brought them together because they see there the opportunity to bring data, which are elaborated, as I said before, in space in order to reduce the lag time and the amount of data that you're bringing on the ground, so that you can also really compete with other data delivered by other services, or actually merge them with IoT and other sensors to deliver advanced services. This could be the case for prevention of catastrophes or resiliency of areas, but also in terms of business, real business. So in farming, in agriculture, there are a lot of opportunities, and also in other emerging areas. So maybe this is a trend that I can see from the space side, using artificial intelligence and cybersec by definition today.
Would you agree to this, Estelle?
Yeah, I guess a couple of points on my end. I would say I'm a big believer in a couple of things. The first one, and especially in deep tech, is really the full stack aspect. So I fully agree to the idea of having an upstream solution with some downstream applications, and I think that's where we are seeing most of the most successful companies in space doing. They have developed capabilities, they have their own proprietary data, and then they own and control the full application layer. So in that sense, in space, I think winners will really be companies that are full stack and that can address large problems. I'm also a big believer in transforming kind of old industries, not necessarily inventing new things, but really trying to address a real market demand, like a now market demand, not like a 20, 30 years from now market demand. And that's also something that we've noticed, in space, companies that are doing extremely well are companies that have been able to optimize, changed old ways that we were launching, that we were building satellites, manufacturing, and optimizing those ways by removing some elements, optimizing some processes, making the production much more cheaper, and also giving access to space to many more. And that has been very successful. So that is the second point that I really like. And then third point, I would say, is really fast iteration and adaptability to market demand. And in that sense, I think it's key to always be in close contact with the customers, making sure that you address a demand that is here, and that you can optimize on wherever you can to make the process faster, and not kind of sleep on what you have. Take your time, make it perfect, and then decide if it's good or not.
And to all of you in this panel, what would be the main challenges entrepreneurs are actually facing regarding those 3 points you mentioned? Fast adaptation, fast iteration, global demand. What would be the main challenges an entrepreneur could be facing, starting with you, Jonathan?
Yeah, there's lots of challenges. There's from hiring talent, which in our case, we've been really fortunate to find incredibly talented people, I believe, because we're on a really exciting mission, to regulatory, to capital. I think for us in deep tech and the area we're in, neurotechnology, using human cognition to train AI models is such a new paradigm that it takes a lot of evangelizing to demonstrate to people what it works and how it works. So market adoption for us is really hard. We can demonstrate great capabilities with proof of concepts in our own labs, in semi-controlled environments, but for the technology to really mature and to be really demonstrated, we need to build real-world models. And for that, we need to partner with big industry players in our field. And that's, for us, the biggest challenge is to start with really small, little POCs with these big players, taken seriously in their environments, and then demonstrate that cognition can add value to make these models more tuned and aligned.
Is that your case as well, Lorenz?
Yes, I would say so, partly. I mean, so you're asking what the biggest challenges are for founders these days in AI. So it depends, of course, quite a bit on the product you want to do. But so speaking of talent, I mean, we made the experience that, probably similar to you, there's really a lot of talent. It's very easy to find good people if you know what you're looking for and if you're able to spot it. So that's not the problem. The challenge is, I guess, I mean, really defining a clear use case where the technology makes sense. I mean, also relating to what you said, now everyone is using AI for everything. And so you have to be a little bit skeptical, I guess, here and there, and ask the question, is this something really innovative, or is this just combining some stuff that's already there and is not really improving much? But then also, on the contrary, I think, especially in Germany, where I can talk about most, but probably in Europe in general, if it comes to like really new technological ideas, people are sometimes also a little bit too skeptical and not, let's say, taking risks. And I think this is the biggest challenge if it's about building a product or for us as an agency. I mean, I had countless conversations of people saying, yeah, okay, it sounds good, it could work, but, well, we would need to invest some money to find out. So could you maybe first prove that it really works? And if the now big American startups would have these opinions, then they wouldn't be as big as they would be now. So you need to be a little bit optimistic, skeptical and optimistic, find the right niche. Yeah, and then, I mean, of course, there's all this bureaucracy and stuff. I mean, what I think is really good in Europe is research funding opportunities. So this is really, really nice. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you need to bring stuff into production and yeah, do this quickly. I think this is quite challenging. I mean, find the right balance between taking a little bit of time, because, I mean, this is a little bit paradox, right? On the one hand, you want to do something super groundbreaking, and on the other hand, you don't have a lot of time. So this is an obvious contradiction. And finding the right balance is crucial. And then, of course, depending on the product, another big challenge in AI is whether you have enough compute. So, I mean, if you work on foundation models, of course, you probably need to spend half of your, or even more maybe, of your funding for compute. And you need to be very clever to choose kind of the special application where you actually have a chance competing with the big players who have definitely more compute than the new founders have. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. And Estelle and Stefano as well, both investor and ecosystem builder. What would be your advices and how would you help companies find the best use cases? Or in your case, what would you respond to companies, needing such investment to go from point A to point B?
Well, what we realized, I mean, I started working in 1996, so I'm a bit old, so I saw a lot of waves. There was one nanotechnology maybe 15 years ago. Everyone started doing nanotechnology. You had more nanotechnology at the coiffeur, actually, than in the lab, but everyone was doing that. Now it's with artificial intelligence. So if I had to give some suggestion, what we started to do is to realize that today you are surviving if you are able to connect disciplines, multidisciplinarity, and sectors, cross-sectoriality. In particular, if you are an enabling layer like artificial intelligence and cybersec. Space, because it's at the end is an infrastructure, is again having the same issue. So we started doing proof of concept as a service, because we realized that when the startups are approaching the investor, they need to deliver milestones. And these milestones are first paper, then they start in complexity, but there is not, to us at least, somebody which is delivering a prototype as a service, when they embed artificial intelligence, mechatronics, and things that actually need to deliver. So we started doing it because we have 3 labs. One is mechatronics and robotics, one is artificial intelligence and digital solution, another one is biotech. So we realized that there are a lot of consultants around, business coaches and mentors around the startups, and I started to understand that being a bit older, and I've seen a lot of instruments in Brussels, because I was playing with Robert Ian Smith, one of the Director General of DG Research in Innovation, and he started to create the CRAFT scheme. It was early 2000, and there the SMEs were not getting any funding, but they were giving contribution to RTOs to do the work. So I understood that actually this part of the game is still important. SMEs, startups are actually looking for delivering something to the investor, which are helping them to go further in their journey. And this part is something that to me is still a challenge, because I don't see a lot of initiatives around which are able to deliver in a win-win scheme this kind of service.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you said, and also the challenge you've raised. I guess like talent and capital to me like sound the most obvious ones. For the capital one, I think the key is really to kind of have an equity story that is almost planned from the very beginning. I know it's easy to say, but I think like that's the kind of large view that often, or I mean, sometimes we see entrepreneurs lack. They try to go directly to, I mean, highest round, highest valuation, from the very like seed beginning, but what they don't necessarily have in mind is that even if they don't raise at a very high valuation, very big round like in the beginning, and they raise a bit less, they still execute. They may eventually get less diluted in the long run than if they raise the big round in the very beginning with high valuation and then don't execute. Because ultimately, investors are going to want to dilute the founders as the journey goes, because we want founders that are incentivized. And so valuation in the very beginning are not like as important as for the next stages of the investment round. So that would be one. And then second point, also on the size of the round, we see a lot of investors that are, of entrepreneurs that are raising a lot more than they actually need. And so that's one, bad for dilution of themselves, because they raise more than they actually need. And that also like gives them a runway that is, I mean, not necessarily like the most optimal. I think sometimes it's just better to raise a bit less, execute on a specific milestone, and then raise a Series A, raise a Series B. It makes a lot more sense, and it will be easier over the long term than trying to raise a very big round, not necessarily succeeding at raising this big round, and then coming back to investors with something that is completely different, and that is a bit confusing sometimes. Like you better want to have someone that is quite straight to the plan, and also like just sometimes you just don't need that much money as you think. Like especially in space, I think it's easy to get lost a bit in the economics. I've seen some companies recently that are just telling me like, yeah, in the end, like I don't think we need that much money. I think we can do that much faster. We can just delete that. We don't need that. And that's the approach you also want to see, like just focus and execute on specific milestones. For what concerns talent, I would say like that's really a challenge that I've observed, and not necessarily in technical talents, but more like business development, sales, and like more like political language type of talents. Because in deep tech, often you get a lot of engineers in the very beginning, but then suddenly you need to really scale the business development team, the sales team, and there it gets a bit more complex because you want to have people that understand technical language, but also understand political and business languages, and that's quite hard to find. So what we do and what we started to do actually is building a list of also people that we could recommend for our portfolio companies to hire, and try to help them find the right people understand what they need, and also like again like I think we live in a world where now anyone can almost do everything. You can learn quite easily, and so backgrounds of the people don't necessarily matter as much as it would have a couple of years ago, and especially for sales, like having a background from another industry can be super beneficial.
Hopefully the funding part will resonate within the minds of every entrepreneur there. To build on what you just mentioning the talents, I see there might be two different point of views there. You saying that finding the right talent is not that easy as we think. You saying that the talent is actually there, we just need to look for there. I mean, how do you see the talent part evolve within the sector? Do you think that there are actually more people? It's just a problem of how to find there. How can we cooperate to, you know, bring the right people within the right structures? You know, so starting from you, maybe, Stefano.
Well, I think the talent is for us, of course, a big challenge like a startup. We're existing since 30 years, so we're not a startups, but we were 19 when I joined in 2020, so now we are 120, and the plan is to be 300 by 2030, which is tomorrow. So getting talents is by definition our objective. What we realized is that because we have a retention which is pretty high, which is 5% turnover, normally being a consultant is pretty low. I think that what we realized that by combining the physical dimension of the laboratories where you have talents, like she said, more engineers, scientists, they like to do things that you know, they can shape. On the other side, they enjoy when somebody is asking something to them because they can deliver consulting. So I think that having a mix and hybrid model is to us, at least so far, being a good attraction for talents, even though we are small. I believe that compared to the big consulting, we are pretty small. But again, this dimension of the physical lab embedded into the consulting model is something that makes sense. And then the capability of connecting easily to the funding ecosystem, both private and public, also give a business development mindset to the people, because at the end, to get funding, you need to be commercial, because at the end, you are preparing proposals either to a private fund or actually to a public organization. You need to sell your story, and I think and you need to substantiate it, because then there are evaluators which are pretty tough. So I think that this is something that in our case demonstrated to work. So by combining these three dimensions, we are able to find them. And working closely with the startups, which is something that we started only 3-4 years ago, gives also the extra boost for the talent, because they can spend time with the startuppers and they can understand what it means to be there. They can also play with the big companies, and in the same place, they can experience all the different interlocutors that you may face. And you deliver value, multidisciplinary across sector. You're not bringing vertical knowledge sometimes in a company which is really cutting edge, but they don't know anything about other sectors, and they miss completely other disciplines. And the social science and humanities, to me, is something that in the future will pay a lot, because as she said, she mentioned politics, or at least to sell arguments, because sometimes the interlocutor is also a public servant that needs to buy or procure solutions for the first time, is something that you need to embed in the team. And I think that also the startups, I think, are really, most probably are also looking at this dimension, which is, again, in terms of multidisciplinary, quite strong in the future. It will be.
Yeah, I should correct myself. In the previous answer, I said market adoption is really the biggest one for us, and indeed at this stage, that is for us the case. Talent has not been a problem, because we are really finding exceptional R&D talent. But what you mentioned, the business development side of things and the sales things, that's for us going to be the next challenge. And we grew from 7 to 50 people in about 2 years. We're now changing our structures, we're building middle layers, and we're building sales and business development capabilities. And indeed, people with a strong grounding in technology that can also sell and hold conversations and work on contracts, that is a massive challenge. So yeah, maybe one additional thing that what I'm finding super exciting is that the real young talent straight out of university is phenomenal, and their efficiency, their productivity is unbelievable. They know how to work coding agents. They are incredibly good with all the new tool sets. And I'm seeing my middle, you know, with the guys with a couple of years of 5 to 10 years experience, really need to tidy up and to really work hard to keep up with the real juniors that come in and are just flying, and that's very exciting to see.
And you, Estelle, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, like I really put a different path, like between like R&D, like engineering talents, which I think there's plenty in Europe. Like it's easy for deep tech companies to recruit and find people that are going to be excited about building new things. I mean, especially in space. Like I think who would want to build a space rocket or like a satellite? Like it's pretty exciting. Like path, but what I was saying is that it's hard to then like go from this kind of development technological scale to really like selling and going to multiple different actors around the ecosystem and navigate in particular.
I agree. No, 100%. I mean, I would say, I mean, so speaking of talents, I mean, the amount of job applications we're getting for AI scientists are growing. I mean, we get a lot of applications. Of course, I mean, 50% you can already throw away because there's a lot of noise, but they're really good ones. So we have to spot them. It's not so easy, but it's possible. However, I mean, one challenge I think we have is to not lose the best talent we have to a different continent, and this is mainly the US. I mean, there's also Asia, of course, but Europeans prefer, I mean, in my experience, to go to the US, probably for cultural reasons, I don't know. And this is a problem I see also a little bit in my research bubble, so I know many people who are quite good in their field, and they did a PhD, and many of them then move to the US. And I think there are two reasons. On the one hand, the ecosystem there is much bigger, so you have more different like-minded AI geniuses in some sense to talk to, and the salary is just 5 times more, or I don't know. And I mean, the salaries that are paid in the US are insane. And then it's of course a question of also culture, like that you want to have in your startup. Like, you know, if you say, okay, I want to pay the same salaries, but then I need more money, I have more responsibility, and I don't know. I mean, we are not playing this game. We actually don't have investors, so I'm maybe not the best to talk about this, but yeah, that's the thing, I think. And like speaking about AI and developing like groundbreaking AI, you not only need the people that are maybe in the top 5%, but maybe in the top 0.5%. And getting those is challenging if you don't have a lot of money. And yeah, so then it's about like, I don't know, coming also a little bit back to the question you asked before, like if you want to build something really groundbreaking, it's about finding the right balance there, right? Maybe not hire too many people, but have a small team, but like a really good team that really fits to what you want to do. But yeah, it depends a lot on the problem, I guess, right? So, I mean, depending on how much specialized competencies you need. I mean, so for instance, like training large language models, I mean, the people there, I mean, the real talent is a little bit rare, and this is why they earn so much money, and this is why the big players are so competitive, and this is why for younger, smaller companies, it's very hard to compete. But so probably we are all on the same page. I mean, there's a lot of talent, but it depends a little bit on what kind of talent. Yeah.
Am I allowed to comment on that? No, so I fully agree with you. I find it interesting to see how it develops. I'm also seeing some people who are thinking about coming back from the US for obvious reasons, right? And that's super interesting. And for that, we really need to find a way to do that properly. These people come from completely different salaries, as you say, and we see exactly the same. It's really hard. We're trying to make that work with stock options. That's something we have in Europe. Though our structures in Europe, and I'm not sure if we come to speak about that, are not very, and certainly I can talk about the Netherlands, but I think also Germany, to hand out stock options and make that tax pleasant for early starters and employees is really hard. It doesn't work very well, and that's where I think Europe can make a really big change if we improve the regulatory systems, the stock option opportunities for startups and scale-ups in the Netherlands. And that's when you can get, I fully agree that 0.5%, which you want to get, you have a bigger chance of getting.
That's exactly what I aimed at talking now. I mean, how could we, as Europe, as one continent, what would we need to do to, you know, stop running behind US or Asia and, you know, make those such sovereign issues, you know, booming or, you know, #1 in Europe? Estelle, for instance?
Yeah, I can go, and perhaps just echoing on what you just said, like I fully agree. There's definitely a difference with the US. I mean, like typically in AI, like if you go to the Bay Area, most of the AI engineers are at over $1 million in salary per year. So it's really hard to match in Europe. Second, I guess, like what's really unique there is that there is a job market that is huge. You can go in the street, you can go to a coffee. People around you are going to speak about new companies, and then someone is going to come to you and say, "Oh, you want a job? Yeah, here is the job." So I mean, you can get a job in like 2 minutes, literally. And I guess the third point that is also like quite unique there is that you have such a community of people that are really like all together all the time, that you can get into a conversation. Like there's, I mean, the 5 of us, for instance, one has an idea, and then like the other would come up like, "Oh, like you have a drone. Like, what if we put my sensor on top of it?" And then the other one would say, "Oh, and what if we put like, I don't know, my software to optimize everything?" And then here you have a new company building right away. And I think that's also like very much particular to the way it's been functioning and the way it's been happening in the past. On the contrary, in Europe, I don't think we should be shy of what we have. I think ultimately we have also like more stability perhaps in the job market. People stay, like, I guess I would guess longer in the jobs, and they really try to develop things to be part of the company. They have stock options, so they're incentivized to do so, definitely. And also like we have great minds. So I guess the key challenge is really to try to bring those people together, find the right models and incentives, as you said. Perhaps like trying to work with public institutions to find like tax incentives as well that would promote those. But just to give sort of an optimistic view, recently, I mean, I've talked to many companies, and indeed a lot of American people are trying to come to Europe because they just want to live in Europe. They've made a lot of money in the US. They don't need a huge salary. And yeah, I've seen like a company in space, they hire 2 top like engineers, like really top engineers from SpaceX. Those guys just wanted a new adventure. And as you said, like they're engineers, they just want to build stuff, they want to be stimulated, they want to have like a mission. And like that's enough for them if you are able to give them what they need. Yeah.
Thank you. Stefano?
Well, I think one of the challenges will be from my point of view to move from the pre-competitive stage into the competitive stage. And I think that Europe was, the good example across the world in terms of funding collaborative research and building teams, where I think that today with the competition that we face in Horizon Europe, I have an idea that the startups are the typical clients of these instruments because they can shape the project around their ideas and they can connect the whole ecosystem around their product or solutions to grow faster. On the other side, we have experienced recently the Innovation Fund, which is actually using the ETF payments by the big emitters, and then reintroduced to develop new factories, new plants with first-of-a-kind solutions. And here we got 100% of the projects approved. working with clients, and we realized that it's a very fantastic tool because you have a lot of innovations that can go to the market. If they're really disruptive, as most of the cases is the case for startups, they can work closely with a company which has a bigger shoulder because there the investments are tens of millions of euros, but they have a real case where they can introduce their innovation. So I think this is more or less the competitive fund or an idea of bringing forward these examples. But Europe, I think, can really lead the way here. Of course, we are under the WTO and state aid rules, so you need to be first of a kind. And to me, those startups which are scaling may find here a lot of good terrain to develop solutions. So to me, this is a challenge, but on the other side, an opportunity for Europe to keep companies, and maybe there is enough value to pay more people, because I'm an engineer, so I know very well that if you want to be rich, you need to do another job. But on the other side, I think that this could deliver more value than actually. And today, I think that when you are a startup, because we are still small, so we face the same problem, you are still being valued for your price. I mean, so the price per hour is still the reference. And to me, a more value-based model, which really looks into what you are delivering to the end user, to the customer, is missing also when you are working closely with the big companies, because sometimes they ask you for a proof of concept, but at the end, this is put in a proposal, and normally the reference is how many hours you will put there, and this is still the old-fashioned model. So I think that a more value-based approach should be win-win, because if there is much value, you can afford for higher salaries, and I think this is another way. And talking, my frustration is sometimes when she said about Silicon Valley and the fact that everyone wants to have a startups. On the other side, when I'm employing somebody which is coming from a startup, I'm always doubting he will or she will be staying with us enough to deliver the value, or after 3-4 months is working in our ecosystem, which is quite powerful, and then she or he will think about the new startup. So this is also the other point that I'm sometimes doubtful about. We should concentrate on those which really value, that can make a difference, and the other one maybe is better to work with an entrepreneurial mindset within a company that allows you to be free, develop business development skills, get your contracts, and try to grow there, which is actually our model.
Thank you. Jonathan and Lorenz, for instance.
Yeah, so maybe I wish I could share the positive view from you, and there are really great grants and great opportunities, and we ourselves have been incredibly fortunate to get a really big contract with the German cybersecurity agency, so are very thankful for that, and it certainly gives us an enormous head start. So in this space, I think we're good. We already discussed talent, stock options, which I think Europe really has a ways to go. Cross-border employee regulations, labor moves is still not as simple as it should be in Europe. We're really struggling from not being a united EU or a united Europe compared to the United States. Maybe then the biggest one is really still capital. And I think capital is here, but it's a very different kind of capital. And it really, I'm afraid, stops at some point beyond Series B and C. I see a lot of companies, especially in tech, deep tech, AI, in the end moving to the West Coast, do a flip, and deep science that was rooted here in Europe, built and developed in the research centers that we have that are awesome, the university that we have are awesome, in the end, still, at some point in time, become global American-based players. And I'm not sure how we're going to fix that, because the amount of capital available in the West Coast or in the US in general is just very different from what we have, and it's very smart capital. It's the ex-Googles and other big tech company founders that are putting the capital in, and it's more institutional. It's the pension funds and so on and forth, and that's a very different kind of capital. So I really wish I could be very optimistic, but every time I spend some time in the Bay Area and I see how things work and how the ecosystem ticks, I think, well, we have some work to do here.
Yeah, maybe adding to this also, so I mean, there's some optimism also visible, right? So, I mean, we have great startups that are being built in Europe. I mean, last week, I think, Jan LeCoeur announced his great funding. I hope he will, or they will, put a lot of the money into Europe and not have the headquarters in the Bay Area. I mean, the image generation models which are developed at Black Forest Labs in Freiburg, Germany, are state of the art. So there are many other potential success stories yet to come. So now I hope they will make the right decisions. And yeah, let's see. I mean, in France you have Mistral, which is one of the really exciting companies. In Germany, the equivalent didn't work out so well, but that's another story. But I think maybe having a little bit more of a bigger picture, I think the important thing in Europe is that we have to focus on the right topics also a little bit. So we shouldn't try to only copy what the Americans are doing and say like, okay, yeah, they do language models, they do image stuff, so let's do the same. Maybe it's not so easy. They have a clear advantage. I mean, all the big tech players, they have not been founded when AI started. They have been existing many years before, and they had a clear advantage money-wise, staff-wise, but also data-wise. So one opportunity that I really see in Europe, and particularly in Germany, but in all Europe, I would say, is industrial AI. I mean, we have a lot of experience in manufacturing, engineering, biotech, whatever. So there's a lot of knowledge. There's a lot of data, actually. There are methods that work, which can be enhanced with AI. And so I think there we really have a chance against American players, maybe even against Chinese players or Asian players. And so we have to find the right topics, but we also have to dare a little bit, right? So when I look at the big German companies, so in some companies I see movement, but in other companies I also see a little bit of skepticism. And I really hope that they will take the chance, also the big German or French or whatever companies, and invest in this now. I mean, it's already too late, to be honest, but to really invest into this, because AI will not stop with chatbots. I mean, that's for sure. So I think the next big thing will probably be on the industrial AI side, and so now's the time to make decisions, and this is a chance. So, and maybe adding to this one more aspect, on the political side, maybe, I mean, we have the obvious disadvantage that we don't have so much compute in Europe, and there I really hope also on the political level that there will be more investments in cloud computing. Speaking about sovereignty, I mean, we need to become independent, and of course this will cost some money, but it needs to be focused, right? So it shouldn't be, I don't know how to translate this in English, but like, you know, spending a little bit here, spending a little bit there, but you need to really coordinate things across Europe, and we need to be the United States of Europe in that sense, because otherwise we don't have a chance to compete with the three big cloud providers from the US. And I think this is very important from a political dimension, but also would be probably helpful for startups if, you know, there could be programs that they could use certain cloud infrastructure more easily, get some subsidizes there and so on. So I really miss the big picture there a little bit. I hope this will change.
Thank you. You wanted to say something, Estelle, maybe, before we conclude?
Yeah, well, I mean, just to add on what you both just said, and yeah, I completely agree. I think, like, especially for later stage funding rounds, it's extremely hard in Europe. Like, we have funding. Like, I'm not saying that companies, like European companies in deep tech, that are successful and go to the US, don't have European investors. They have European investors, but those are really like minority stakes investors. Like, if you want to have a lead investor for a very large funding round today in Europe, it's extremely hard to find an investor that it can pull like a like 50 to 100 million lead check into the company. Like, it's extremely hard, because ultimately, just because like VC funds don't have the capacity to deploy that amount of money. Like, they have funds that are not large enough. We have initiatives to bring larger, like 1 billion funds that are popping up. There's this 5 billion fund also coming up, like with the European Commission. I think this is great, and we need definitely more like that. but it's extremely hard, and we need that more, and we need that to be developed soon. So I completely agree on that point, and on what you just said also. Like I mean, I think it's indeed not a matter of trying to copy everything that the US is doing. I think we have great talent, great technologies. Maybe we just need to do our own expertise on certain areas and focus, as you said. And in particular, like you mentioned compute. I think like in France, like typically we have like an arsenal of pretty good energy providers. Maybe that's where we should act, like we should use that energy and try to build something around compute that could enable our AI companies to develop more.
Thank you. And before we give the floor to you for 15 minutes Q&A, do you want to add any final word aside to try to create the United States of Europe? Each of you, maybe.
I think what I just said before sums it up. So I think we have to, find the right topics, but in the right moment also dare and try out some stuff. Have a good political environment for this, and I think there are great initiatives in this direction. I can speak for Germany. I mean, so you mentioned Cyberagentur. We're also with Cyberagentur now for some time, and this is a great initiative. Where I think it's also quite focused on actual progress. So I think this is one problem that we sometimes have with these research fundings, that it's more about writing a final report than about the results that actually come out. So there's too much bureaucracy, and it's not enough focused on the actual outcome. Focus on results, be quick but not too quick, find the right topic. Compute is a big story. We talked about it, and I think we have the capacities. We just have to use them. But it's not so easy. I mean, also in preparation for this panel, I looked up some statistics again, and so I attended the last big AI conference in San Diego, NeurIPS, in December, and looking at the statistics, the amount of European institutions that published papers there actually decreased in comparison to the previous year. So we have to do our homework. I think we are on a good path, but we also have to face reality. And this is also what I'm missing sometimes when I listen to politicians, but that's another story. Thank you.
Well, I think that the idea, of course, of the United States of Europe makes sense. Working on the pre-commercial side, I think we have a lot of advantage because we are not working with a lot of barriers. And actually, bottom-up, you can get a lot of inputs on what would be the future, because in the startups, there are already business models which are disrupting also the way we do things. We have a lot of constituencies and platforms which are developing strategic roadmaps. To me, the tricky point is, as he said, we need to give priorities, real priorities, because if you look at Horizon Europe and you only have 1 or 2 projects winning, to me that is a bit of a mess. Because if you're really looking at a solution, looking for opportunities, which is not a tender, but it's a call for proposal, you should allow maybe 4 or 5 always, at least more opportunities for that specific challenge. So working a bit more on prioritization and working bottom up with a lot of collaborative research, because innovators are by definition in line with this idea. Maybe if you move to the status quo and those which are trying to keep advantages in some areas and so on, maybe they are against. But I think that working bottom up from the research perspective, collaborative research, startups, European Innovation Council, and all the ecosystem which has been built, there I think that we have a lot of value which we need to exploit. And startups to me are the key players here, because they are really looking to do something, and they need to get support.
Thank you. Jonathan?
I don't think I have anything to add to previous speakers and my previous note.
Thanks a lot. And finally, Estelle?
Yeah, maybe just take opportunities and just as a last thought, an example, like last time I saw a US company pitching, and basically they were pitching a technology that they acquired, and guess where from? It was from Europe, actually. So the whole technology of that company was made in Europe. They acquired it because it was a patent. No one else wanted it in Europe, apparently. So maybe we should just look also at what we have and take those opportunities.
Thanks a lot to all those 4 panelists. And now we have 12 minutes for you to ask any questions to our panelists. So if you have any questions, please raise your hand and we'll be sharing the micro. Suppose no one wants to dare, but anyway.
It was very clear.
Thanks a lot to our 4 panelists and for this exhilarating panel. And I mean, I think you can enjoy tea, coffee before the next panel starts at 3 p.m. Thanks a lot.